Hey everybody, Councilor Melanie Kebler here, and I am gonna do another agenda preview and go through the agenda that's up for next Wednesday, June 16th. So let's go ahead and dive into it. So, let me go back up to the top here. So here is our agenda. As always, this can be found at the URL that I'm putting up on the screen. Council agenda is the short URL to find this agenda, and that's where you'll see our meeting page, and then you scroll down and click agenda and you'll find this link. So we are starting at 5:30. We're starting with a work session, and we're starting with an executive session, and I wanted to explain that a little bit. Executive session is basically an exception to our open and public meeting laws. And when we created public meeting laws in Oregon, the legislators creating those laws recognized there's some times, sorry, excuse me, turn my phone off. There's some times that public bodies are going to need actually to speak in private about certain matters. And that's so that the public body itself doesn't lose a negotiating position, doesn't give away sensitive or private, say like HR information about employees. And there's other reasons. If you go to what it says here is ORS, that's Oregon Revised Statutes. And if you Google that, it should take you to a page that shows you the statute. And right here it says 2E, and that means we're going to be talking about a potential real estate transaction that the city, is thinking about entering into. And the way to think about this is, if you imagine you were buying a house or some property, and you and the seller are going back and forth on offers, and maybe you and your realtor sat down and said, well, I'm willing to go up to X amount, but let's offer a little lower first, and then if they counter, we'll go up higher. You wouldn't want the other person listening in on that conversation or able to request a public record about that conversation, right? So there's a reason to have a little bit of that closed door conversation, but usually what happens out of the executive session is that later in the meeting, there'll be a motion and some information that's provided for the public if an action needs to be taken out of that executive session. That gives a little more idea of what it is we were talking about and what we're planning to do. So I wanted to explain that a little bit. The other thing to highlight in the work session is our downtown update. And I'm really excited to hear about this. You may have seen in the news or in the paper that there's going to be a presentation about opening Minnesota Street to people. And I think there's going to be some really exciting visuals and some really exciting ideas and visions for what Minnesota could look like if there are no cars there. And if it's street furniture, street trees, people walking, and a pedestrian zone. I'm really excited to hear about that and to hear about the vision for that and how we might start testing that out and trying it and seeing how it works in our downtown area. So I think that's going to be a great part of the work session. Okay, so moving down through the agenda, again, we get to our visitors section, which is where people give public comment. And then the consent agenda, which I've explained before, is routine items that we approve all at once by approving the consent agenda. So I'm going to move through those. A lot of these this time, I guess, are contracts for software renewals and things like that we need. And then the big meat of the meeting, this next meeting, is going to be about our budget. And this item 6 is sort of split up into a bunch of different things that are legally required to be separate items, but we're going to be moving through them kind of as a group. And this is all about our budget for the next 2 years, or the next biennium. And there'll be a public hearing. There'll be opportunity for people to comment on this. We previously had budget committee meetings in May. I think 2 or 3, I can't remember. They were long meetings to go through all the different parts of the budget, to talk about them, to make some recommendations for adjustments. And then in the interim, there may have been some other adjustments that we may hear about from staff, and we will talk about the budget again and go through all these items that have a 6 on them and move through them all. And hopefully finally end with a approved budget for our next biennium. So after that, we just have a few other kind of pretty regular items, I would say. We're going to talk about the Downtown Economic Improvement District, which we've talked about in previous meetings, and we're sort of moving through the process of approving that. And what that is that there's a district, and I think I have the map here to show. Yeah, that is all of the commercial properties in this district basically are assessed a certain amount, and that money goes to improvement in that district. Things like the flowers downtown, certain programming that happens downtown, certain cleanup that happens downtown is funded by that economic district, and that's basically people throwing in for the good of everyone in that area, and it needs to be renewed every so often, and that's the process we're moving through right now. Then the other thing I wanted to point out on this agenda is that council is going to move into playing our other role, which is as the Bend Urban Renewal Agency. So that's the agency that oversees all of our areas that we have put in programs for tax increment financing, which I'm not going to get into totally here, but basically is a way to reinvest in an area to improve it and to redevelop it in a way that we want to see going forward. And it's been called urban renewal in the past. There's some stigma about that term because it has been used in the past to gentrify areas and move people out. And we have areas of tax increment financing like the core area, which has a plan. Juniper Ridge is another area where we're going to be working on moving toward that vision of improving and redeveloping and avoiding that that problem of just pushing people out who are already there. We want to include, of course, the community that's already here in those plans to improve these areas. So when we put on our, this is called BURA, B-U-R-A, BURA hats, basically, we reconvene as council. And you'll see when we reconvene as, we reconvene as BURA, not council. And you'll see when we reconvene as BURA that Barb Campbell is leading the meeting because she is actually the chair of BURA right now. So she leads this meeting and we move through, again, some related budget items that are all related to the city budget as well, and the plans that we have for the next few years as an urban renewal agency instead of council. It's a little strange, but it's basically just changing roles to talk about specific urban renewal or tax increment financing items, and that's when we get together as BURA. Basically, we don't go anywhere. We just sit there and we say, now we're convening as BURA, and then we move through these items. So that's the meeting for Wednesday. Again, I think budget is a big item. The downtown presentation is going to be great. And I hope to hear, again, robust public comment from people calling in and commenting on all these items. I was thinking I have, this isn't too long, but I wanted to try to show, and maybe I'll put a link with this video, exactly where to find that budget document. It's a little bit buried on the city's website, but it is out there for the public to look at, and it has been since May. So I will put a link to that somewhere in the comments so people can check out the budget document ahead of the Wednesday meeting and take a look at that and provide us feedback. So that's it for Wednesday, June 16th. Just a reminder, send your input to us, Council all, before the meeting, if at all possible. But if you do, if you do see something at the meeting you want to comment on afterwards, like especially if you are able to view this downtown update and then tell us what you think about that, I would really appreciate that feedback from folks who are, interested in the vitality of our downtown and opening streets up to people. So thanks everybody, and have a great rest of your weekend.